Hello! In this video, we will talk about how to use Azure Active Directory workload identity on Azure Kubernetes Service. This feature is still in public preview, but we should look into it closer, so this has some benefits for us. Applications that we deploy in AKS cluster require AAD application credentials or managed identities to access protected resources. Azure AD workload identity for Kubernetes integrates with that capabilities, native to Kubernetes to federate with external identity providers. This is how it looks like. So Kubernetes workload sends assigned service account token to Azure Active Directory. The token is checked if it's valid with the OIDC Connect Issuer. If it's valid, Active Directory issue AAD token to our workload, and then with that token we can access services. To show how workload identity works in practice, we will create AKS cluster, we'll create Azure Key Vault and Azure Storage account. We will set up Azure AD workload identity, and we will deploy FastApi application. To make it fun, this application will perform following task. We will send the request with a question we want to receive from ChatGPT. The workload will get the OpenAI API key from the Key Vault. It will send request to the OpenAI API to process that response. When we will get that response, we will save it to blob storage. So this is how it will look like. I think it would be fun. Create the resources. First, let's prepare the names we will need for our convenience, so we will not have to type them each time. Right now, let's create the resource group. Now, let's create the user assigned managed identity for the Kubernetes control plane. Right now, let's create the admin group in Azure Active Directory for our AKS service. Next, let's add our user to this group. Here, you'll have to provide your ID. For me, it's my email address for the user that I'm currently logged in. The next step, we will create the Azure Kubernetes Service cluster. See, it's still in the preview and under development, so we should not use it in production yet. Okay, our cluster is created. As you can see, we have to enable workload identity. We have to enable OIDC issuer. We also enable manage identity, and we pass the identity which we created before. In the blog post, you will find the link to the documentation where you can check definition or all these flags. Right now, let's get AKS credentials for our newly created cluster. Let's check if we can connect. Okay, as you can see, here's our node and it's already started. So right now we'll need to get an OIDC issuer URL from our cluster. Right now, let's create the Key Vault. After our key vault is created, we'll add the secret to our key vault. As I mentioned before, it will be OpenAI API key. So you will have to create an account if you do not already have there, and obtain the API key if you would like to create such application for yourself. After we added the key to the key vault, right now let's create the storage account. For the convenience of this tutorial, we will enable public network access, because usually we will deploy the Kubernetes and the key vault and the storage in the virtual network. But right now, for the simplicity of this presentation, we'll enable public access. Next, we will create the container in the storage. We will store the responses from the ChatGPT. Right now, we will create the user assigned managed identity for our workload. Next, we will grant permissions to the key vault and to the storage account for that identity which we just created. The managed identity will be able to get the secret value and also will be storage blob data contributor in the storage account. Next, we will create a Kubernetes service account. Here you have the example file. We only have to insert the client ID of the user managed identity. As you can see, here we obtained that ID. So after we paste it here, we can apply the changes. Okay, our service account was created. As you can see, it was just created. Right now, we can finally create the federated identity credentials for our workflow. Okay, it's created. Let's go to the Azure portal. This identity, we created the federated credentials. Let's go to the federated credentials. Okay, you can see it was just created with the service account name workload SA. And here is the OIDC URL, which we were retrieving earlier in this video. Let's go back to the next step. Now we will deploy the application. Here you can see you can get the image of that application which I created for you. And here's the most important part of that code, which we'll review right now. Here is the pedantic model for our question. We will pass the string in our request. Next class is responsible to retrieve ChatGPT APK from the key vault. As you can see, we do not pass anywhere the secret for the service principal. We'll use managed identity where possible with the token, not with the secret. Next class is responsible for saving the response to the txt file and upload it to the storage account. Here is the URL for the storage account. And here is the container where we will save that file. And the last class is responsible to send the request to the OpenAPI API. It will use Text DaVinci model. Here we will pass our question. And here is how many words we want to receive. And this is the endpoint for our application, which we will send our question. So right now, let's get the URL for the key vault. Right, and next, let's create the secret. Okay, secret was created. Next, we will create the Kubernetes pod. Here's the sample YAML file for that pod. We need to remember we need to pass the service account name, which has all the privileges. And here is the sample image for our application. I already created that file, so let's apply it. Let's check if the pod is running. Okay, the pod is running. So right now, the last part, let's test our application. Let's forward the ports so we can call that application from our local host. Let's open new tab and let's curl our endpoint. Okay, we received some response. Let's go back here. Let's check the logs. (201), our blob is created. Right now, let's go to our storage account. Containers, ChatGPT. As you can see, here's our blob. Let's look inside it. And here is the response to our question. So our task is accomplished. Everything is working. As the last information, I wanted to show you all the logs in the container. As you can see, the response was 401, since there was no token for that application created and validated yet. So after we obtained the token, we got the response to 100. And here is one more time the call for the manage identity credentials. Next, we wanted to call the storage account. So the same procedure is making. There is only tenant ID and client ID set. We have to call the AAD for the token. We acquired token, and we was able to upload the file to the storage. After that, we receive the response that the blob was created. Our test is completed with success. I hope you liked this setup. If you have any comments, let me know. I will explain all and respond to all the questions that you might have. I will post the link to this blog post in the description. See you in the next video. Thank you.